Royalty 101. What is the Order of the Garter? The most noble Order of the Garter sneaks into so many of my videos. Nearly every significant member of the English and British royal family since the 1300s, and a number of foreign royals have been knights or ladies of the Garter. And the symbols of the order can be spotted in so many royal portraits, if you know where to look. Most recently, the order made an appearance in pop culture when William, Prince of Wales, and other senior royal men wore garter robes to the coronation of King Charles III. And on Monday, the 19th of June, 2023, Garter Day, the order met at Windsor Castle for the first time under King Charles III to induct 2 new members. So what is a chivalric order? What is the history of the Order of the Garter? Why is their symbol a piece of women's lingerie? And who are its members? Plus, I'll tell you about the orders behind the bright blue and red robes Catherine, Princess of Wales, and other female royals were wearing, and the green velvet mantle sported by Princess Anne. What is an order of chivalry? An order of chivalry, or a chivalric order, is a group of knights bound by a set of rules. The first recorded was the Order of the Holy Sepulchre, founded in 1099 to protect Christian pilgrims in the Holy Land during the First Crusade. This order survives today and is headed by the Pope. Many other chivalric orders were formed during the Crusades. Their knights often lived in communes and took vows of poverty, obedience, and chastity. In addition to protecting pilgrims, they were often the aggressors in battles to try and take the Holy Lands from their Muslim inhabitants. The most famous chivalric order was the Knights Templar, formed in 1119. For nearly 2 centuries, the Templars gained power and wealth by serving as the first international bank. Crusaders would deposit gold with Templars in Europe and receive a promissory note, which they could redeem for cash once they reached the Holy Lands. But when Philip IV of France got deeply in debt to the order, he plotted their downfall. On Friday, the 13th of October, 1307, Templar knights all over Europe were arrested, tortured into false confessions, and burned at the stake. That's why Friday the 13th is still considered unlucky. Despite this bloodshed, chivalric orders continued to be popular throughout history. Crowned heads all over Europe and later the world formed their own orders as a way to reward their most powerful knights and nobles. And by requiring members to swear to a code of chivalry, they were able to secure their loyalty. In 1430, Philip III of Burgundy founded the Order of the Golden Fleece, which remains an important honor among his Habsburg descendants. In 1698, Tsar Peter the Great of Russia formed the Order of St. Andrew. In 1822, Emperor Pedro I of Brazil established the Order of the Southern Cross. In 1861, King Rama IV of Siam formed the Order of the White Elephant. In 1917, George V began the Order of the British Empire. Most of the British celebrities you know today who go by Sir or Dame are members of this order. Dozens of chivalric orders still survive today. Their knights and ladies or dames no longer wield swords, but an invitation to join an order has become a way to honor individuals for outstanding contributions to their nations, or to the monarch personally. They are also a diplomatic tool for royals to honor each other and maintain international bonds of friendship. For example, Elizabeth II was not only the sovereign of dozens of chivalric orders of the UK and Commonwealth, but also a member of no less than 79 foreign chivalric orders, including Spain's Order of the Golden Fleece, Japan's Order of the Chrysanthemum, and Senegal's Order of the Lion. Whenever you see royals wearing sashes across their chests, which are called ribands, they are repping their chivalric orders. What is the most noble order of the Garter? The Garter is the oldest and highest chivalric order in England, founded by King Edward III in 1348. Edward's reign was forged in violence and war. His mother, Isabella of France, suffered years of neglect and abuse at the hands of her husband, Edward II, and his manipulative lover, Hugh Despenser. So she took her son and returned to her homeland, where she raised an army, sailed back to England, and took the throne by force. Despenser was publicly castrated, hanged, drawn, and quartered, and Edward II was locked away in prison, where he soon mysteriously died. I have a video all about Isabella, known as the She-Wolf of France. 14-year-old Edward III was king in name only. Isabella and her lover Roger Mortimer really controlled the country. By 17, the teenage king was chafing against his mother and Mortimer's control, so he and a band of loyal knights plotted to capture the lovers. Mortimer was found guilty of treason and hanged. Isabella was briefly imprisoned, but soon proved her loyalty to her son and was allowed to return to court as a glamorous queen mother. Now wielding the power of a king, tall and handsome Edward decided to go to war. He fought on two fronts with the Scots and the French, who were allies together against the English. King Philip VI of France confiscated the Duchy of Aquitaine, which had belonged to kings of England since Eleanor of Aquitaine married into the family. Edward was furious. In response, he claimed that he, rather than Philip, was the rightful king of France. He did have a point. He was the eldest surviving grandson of King Philip IV through his mother Isabella. Her three brothers had all taken a turn on the throne, but died leaving only daughters. Under the English rules of succession, which at the time usually ignored female cousins, Edward would have been the rightful king. But France had a strict rule of agnatic primogeniture, meaning the throne could never pass through female lines. That is how a distant cousin, Philip VI, came to the throne. Still, Edward thought he could cut through the inheritance red tape with a stronger army, and he threw down the gauntlet, which became the 100 Years' War. Rather than rally noble knights as previous kings had done, Edward raised taxes and hired a professional army of skilled warriors. His new war machine was a revelation. He premiered 6-foot English longbows. Their range and power rained devastation on the enemy and were the medieval equivalent of an atomic bomb. English men were ordered by law to practice archery from a young age, and their deadly skill became legendary. If an English archer was unlucky enough to be captured by the French, the index and middle fingers of their right hand, which they used to draw a bow, were cut off. This originated the English vulgarity of displaying 2 fingers. Showing these digits intact was a way of saying to the French, "You haven't captured me." Edward's volley of arrows, followed by a stampede of heavy cavalry, cut through the French at the Battle of Crécy. Next, he laid siege to the crucial port city of Calais. After a year, the city surrendered, and the king ordered the 6 burghers or leaders to present him the keys to the city, barefoot with nooses around their necks. Edward's queen, Philippa of Hainault, fell to her knees to beg for their lives, and Edward spared them. This was a publicity stunt to display the king's chivalrous mercy. To celebrate his victory over Calais, Edward III held a tour of feasts and tournaments. He also established the most noble order of the Garter. The first 24 knights he selected to join the order were those who had helped him to victory in France. Edward was inspired by the legends of King Arthur and intended to forge a new round table by surrounding himself with loyal knights. This was also a politically savvy move, as evidenced by the rules the order knights had to follow. They were forbidden from fighting each other and were required to gain the king's permission before leaving the country. This way, they couldn't sneak off and raise a foreign army against the king, as his mother had done to his father. In return, the king promised to call on his Garter knights before all others to accompany him on military endeavors. This allowed them to build their reputations and wealth in the form of spoils of war. What is a garter, and why did Edward III choose it as a symbol for the order? The badge of the order is a blue garter with a gold buckle, and the motto, On ne soit qui mal y pense, Old French for shame on him who thinks ill of it. The garter surrounds a shield of the Red Cross of St. George on a white field, which is also the flag of England. Before elastic was invented in 1845, people used garters, small belts, to hold up their stockings. In the Middle Ages, men and women of all classes wore stockings for warmth and modesty. Women wore them under floor-length gowns, and men under knee or ankle-length tunics. In the 1300s, when the order was founded, the garter was a unisex undergarment. But by the 1400s, men began to wear hose, knitted leggings which came up to the waist and didn't require a garter. So subsequent generations of garter knights came up with a legend to explain why their manly order was named after what had become an item of women's lingerie. The legend claims that Joan, the Countess of Salisbury, was enjoying a lively dance at the Victory Ball in Calais when her garter fell from her leg. The lady was mortified as the court sniggered at her. But the chivalrous King Edward stepped forward to rescue her. He picked up the garter, strapped it to his own leg, and admonished the court with the words, On ne sens qui mal y pense. Shame on him who thinks ill of it. Interestingly, Joan later married the king's son, Edward the Black Prince. This story may have begun among French knights as a way to make fun of the English order for using a feminine undergarment as their sigil. But there was another type of garter which was used for strapping on knights' armor, and this is more likely the type of garter Edward III was referencing. A different origin story claims that back in 1189, King Richard I honored his most valiant knights on the eve of the siege of Acre by strapping an armor garter below their knees. The English won this key battle in the Third Crusade, and their garters were a symbol of their victory. There is also a connection between the Order of the Garter and one of the most famous Arthurian poems, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, which was written by an unknown author around the same time the order was formed. In the story of chivalry and honor, many of the knights wear garters below their knees, and a version of the order's motto was scrolled at the bottom of the original text of the poem. Edward III most likely chose the garter as a symbol of binding his knights together in common brotherhood and in support of a common cause, namely his own martial ambitions to conquer and rule France. The motto likely really means shame on him who thinks ill of Edward's claim to the French throne, and the use of a French motto and selecting blue and gold, the French royal colors, are no coincidence. Edward III never did realize his ambitions to conquer France, though he spent the rest of his life trying. He lost his son, Edward the Black Prince, to this ambition. After spending most of his adult life in battle, the prince died of dysentery at 45, predeceasing his father. Their descendants continued to claim the French throne and waged the 100 Years' War with France. The city of Calais did remain under English control until 1553, but the Order of the Garter was Edward III's lasting legacy. On ceremonial occasions, order members wear the badge on the left breast of their blue velvet mantles, with the exception of the sovereign who wears a garter star and a mantle with a train. Garter robes used to have a red hood, but this evolved to a splash of red velvet at the right shoulder. Members wear a collar of pure gold, composed of heraldic knots alternating with enamel medallions of a Tudor rose, introduced by Henry VII, encircled by a garter. From the collar hangs an enameled or bejeweled figure of St. George, the patron saint of both England and the order, on horseback slaying a dragon. The collar is attached to the mantle by white ribbons tied at the shoulders. Members wear a Tudor bonnet of black velvet and a plume of white ostrich and black heron feathers. And they wear an actual garter. Knights buckle it below their left knee and ladies around their left arm. At other formal events, Garter members wear the collar over military uniform or morning dress. In the 1600s, King Charles I introduced two other marks of membership for formal occasions: the riband and the star. The riband is a 4-inch blue sash worn over the left shoulder and pinned at the right hip with a small emblem of St. George. The star is pinned on the left breast. It is an enameled garter badge encircled by an 8-point silver star depicting the cardinal directions of the compass. When an order member dies, their nearest relative returns the breast star personally to the sovereign and other insignia to the order. The family is allowed to keep the riband, mantle, and hat. Monarchs throughout history are depicted wearing signs of their Garter membership. Kings until Charles III wore the Garter as part of their coronation costume. Charles did wear the collar of the Order of the Garter to his coronation. In coronations past, members of the royal family wore crimson velvet, ermine fur-lined robes of peerage. But William, Prince of Wales, has been publicly critical of fur, and Charles wanted to slim down the visibility of the peerage at his coronation. So, male members of the royal family wore their Order of the Garter mantles instead. This was not completely without precedence. In 1911, Edward, Prince of Wales, the future Edward VIII, wore Garter robes to his father, George V's coronation. Who are the members of the Order of the Garter? Edward III established the order with 26 inaugural knights, himself, his eldest son, Edward the Black Prince, and 24 hand-picked warriors, who were known as companion knights. They each had portraits included in the Bruges Garter book. To this day, the order consists of the monarch, called the Sovereign of the Garter, the Prince of Wales, and a maximum of 24 companions. There are 6 officers who are not part of the 24: the Chancellor, the Prelate, the Register, the Garter Principal King of Arms, the Usher, and the Secretary. They wear crimson satin robes with a simple crest of the Cross of St. George. The Garter Principal King of Arms is the senior officer of the College of Arms, the body which has authority over heraldry in England, Wales, and North Ireland. If you want an official coat of arms, then you would have to go to them to get it. The Garter Principal King of Arms also has the special duty of announcing the death of a monarch and the accession of a new monarch from the balcony at St. James's Palace. In 1358, Edward III inducted his wife, Philippa of Hainault, as a Lady of the Garter, possibly to prevent her raising an army against him as his mother had done to his father, but more so because he deeply respected her. Philippa was exceptionally wise. She was regent while Edward was at war with France, and she fostered the fledgling wool and weaving industry into a major economic force, which secured England's wealth for generations to come. The Queen was not counted as one of the 24 companions, but as a supernumerary member. Royal women continued to be included until Henry VII added his mother, Margaret Beaufort, in 1488, and then discontinued the practice. Aside from the handful of queens regnant, Mary I, Elizabeth I, Mary II, Anne, and Victoria, who were each sovereign of the order, there were no other female members, until 1901 when Edward VII inducted his wife, Queen Alexandra. From then on, queens consort were included as supernumerary members. But it wasn't until 1987 that Queen Elizabeth II decreed that women could be inducted as ladies' companion. A lady is a female equivalent of a knight. In 1990, Lavinia Fitzalan Howard, Duchess of Norfolk, became the first non-royal Lady of the Garter. She was honored for her philanthropic work and close friendship with the Queen. Lavinia stood in for Elizabeth at her coronation dress rehearsals. For most of the order's history, monarchs inducted their own sons and heirs as companion knights. This was a rite of passage when young royal men were in their teens or early 20s. But King George III had 7 adult sons and a number of cousins who were clamoring for limited seats. So in 1805, he decreed that royal family members could be inducted as supernumerary knights and wouldn't count towards the limit of 24. The current royal knights and ladies of the Garter are Queen Camilla, and Princess Royal, Prince Andrew. This was one of the honors he wasn't stripped of following his disgrace. Prince Edward, Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Edward, Duke of Kent, Prince Richard, Duke of Gloucester, and Princess Alexandra, Lady Ogilvy. Prince William was inducted in 2008 as the 1000th Garter Knight. In 1813, George, the Prince Regent, inducted Emperor Alexander I of Russia into the order as an act of diplomacy. Supernumerary membership was thus extended to include foreign monarchs, who are known as stranger knights and ladies of the Garter. There are currently 8: Margrethe II, Queen of Denmark, Karl XVI Gustav, King of Sweden, Juan Carlos, former King of Spain, Beatrix, former Queen of the Netherlands, Akihito, Emperor Emeritus of Japan, Harald V, King of Norway, Felipe VI, King of Spain, and Willem Alexander, King of the Netherlands. Appointment into the order is seen as a way to strengthen bonds of friendship between allied nations and royal families, but it hasn't always worked. If members take up arms against the sovereign or the realm, they can be degraded out of the order. In 1521, Edward Stafford, Duke of Buckingham, was found guilty of plotting to take the throne from his cousin Henry VIII and was beheaded at the Tower of London. He was degraded from the Order of the Garter in a formal ceremony at St. George's Chapel, during which the Garter King of Arms read aloud the instrument of degradation, and a herald climbed up a ladder and removed his banner, crest, and helmet, and threw them to the ground below. Then the rest of the heralds kicked the disgraced knight's heraldry down the length of the chapel, out the door, and into the castle ditch. During the First World War, 8 knights from enemy nations, including Wilhelm II, German Emperor, and Franz Joseph, Emperor of Austria, were degraded from the order. And in World War II, Victor Emmanuel III of Italy and Emperor Hirohito of Japan were also degraded. Hirohito was reinstated in 1971 during a state visit to the UK. The Order of the Garter in modern times. Garter Day is still held each year in late June. Members of the order in full dress and their spouses meet at Windsor Castle. When any new knights or ladies are due for installation, an investiture ceremony is held in the throne room. The new member swears an oath of loyalty to the sovereign and the order, and they are invested with the garter, riband, mantle, and collar. Next, a state luncheon is enjoyed in the banqueting room. Then the members process on foot to St. George's Chapel. There, a religious service is held and the heraldry of the new member is installed. Living members display their achievements of arms in the chapel. Their helmets, crests, and banners decorate the top of the choir. Knights and Ladies Companion and Stranger Knights and Ladies are to the left and right, while the Royal Knights and Ladies are opposite the altar. Each member also has a stall plate which marks their seat in the chapel. When a member dies, their achievements of arms are removed to make room for those of a new member, but their stall plate remains as a memorial. Thus, St. George's Chapel houses one of the finest collections of historic heraldry in the world. The 2 new members who were inducted by King Charles in 2023 are Catherine Ashton, Baroness Ashton of Upholland, who was a representative to the European Union, and Chris Patten, Baron Patten of Barnes, who was a governor of Hong Kong. There are currently 5 vacant seats, which may be filled by the monarch at his discretion. It would be customary for Prince Harry to be inducted as a royal knight, but that seems unlikely. Catherine will likely be inducted as a royal lady at some point. Both Camilla and Prince Philip joined before they became consorts, but previous princesses of Wales had to wait until they were queens. In the meantime, Catherine is already a member of another prestigious royal order. What other order mantles did royals wear to the coronation? Most of the senior royal women wore bright blue and red satin mantles of the Royal Victorian Order. Even Princess Alexandra, who is also a Lady of the Garter, wore her Victorian mantle to match. In portraits without the mantles and on other formal occasions, you can see royals wearing the blue and red riband of the order. The Royal Victorian Order was established in 1896 before Queen Victoria's Silver Jubilee. Back then, appointments to the Garter had to be made on the advice of ministers and had become highly political. Victoria wanted her own order through which she could honor her family and favored subjects without the red tape. The order's official day is June 20th, the anniversary of Victoria's ascent to the throne. Like the Order of the Garter, the current monarch is sovereign. Unlike the Garter, there is no limit to the number of knights or dames, another female equivalent, who can be inducted. There are, however, levels of knighthood. At the top are the Knights and Dames Grand Cross. Their badge is an 8-pointed star surrounding a cross with Victoria's cipher and crown. All royals are at this level. Foreign royals may also be inducted as honorary Knights and Dames Grand Cross. Next are Knights and Dames Commander, then Commanders, Lieutenants, Members, and finally recipients of the Royal Victorian Medal in either gold, silver, or bronze. The only royal lady who played by her own rules was Anne, Princess Royal. She is the member of the most ancient and most noble Order of the Thistle, Scotland's highest chivalric order. Anne wore her gorgeous green velvet thistle mantle to the coronation. The Order of the Thistle was founded in 1687 by King James VII and II. He claimed it was a revival of an order originally founded in 786 by Caius, King of the Scots, who, before winning a battle against the English, saw the cross of St. Andrew appear in the sky and was inspired to form an order dedicated to the saint. The thistle is the national flower of Scotland. According to legend, in 1263, the invading Norse army was attempting to sneak up on the Scottish army. They stealthily removed their boots and moved under cover of darkness. But one of the barefoot Norsemen stepped on a spiny thistle and cried out, giving the game away and saving the Scots from defeat. The order meets every other year to induct new members. Their last meeting was June 20th, 2022. The Thistle is limited to just 16 knights and ladies, plus royal members: the King, Anne, William, who is known as the Duke of Rothesay north of the border, and, as of June 16th, Queen Camilla. The king inducted his wife into the Order of the Thistle ahead of their coronation procession in Scotland, which will be held on July 5th. I'll have more on that in a future video. Because it is an odd year, there won't be a Thistle Day during which Camilla is publicly inducted until next year. But I'm guessing that because she was added to the order now, we will be seeing her and other royals donning green thistle robes during the Scottish coronation procession. So what do you think about the Order of the Garter and the other chivalric orders? Do they have a place in modern times, or are they just royal participation trophies? Either way, now that you know what to look for, I bet you'll be spotting the symbols of these orders every time you see a royal portrait. Want even more tea on history? Check out the History Tea Time podcast. You can now follow History Tea Time on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, comment your thoughts, and check out my other royal history videos. If you really want to help, please consider supporting me on Patreon. A link is in the description. Thank you for watching.